This is Chanel Bunger with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast, and today I'm excited to speak with regular guest Mark Peysakhovich, Managing Partner at MBM Advantage, who joins us monthly to discuss trends that he's watching in the cannabis space. Mark, thank you as always for joining me today. Why don't you take it away and tell us about some of the things that you're seeing out there?
Thanks, Chanel, and always great to be with you. Well, I think, as we're coming towards the end of 2023, I think there are just sort of a few general terms we could call this year. I think we could call this year more of the same. We could call the year of missed opportunities. But the bottom line is that not much has changed really in the fundamentals of the cannabis industry in 2023. And so, over the long term, I think most people think this is still a good play. Cannabis is going to become a significant packaged good, just like any other. At the same time, there are certainly continued headwinds. So if, you're investing money for a year or two, cannabis is probably not a good idea. I think what we saw in 2023 was that it was a year of really just unmet expectations. As people were coming out of 2022, we were saying, well, hopefully cannabis will be legalized soon. Hopefully cannabis will be descheduled soon. Hopefully various states that have sort of not nailed the landing on their cannabis programs and who needed to go fix things would fix things. As we've talked about all that, none of that has really come to pass in 2023. And so I think that, people are watching these days for any positive bit of news. I think one of the things that positive news does is it frees up investment in cannabis from investors who have become more cynical. It used to be that cannabis had that slightly naughty appeal, the mysterious thing where, it was just going to be a license to print money. I think people have seen better. But every time there's news about, the federal government doing something to lighten up on cannabis, bells and whistles go off, they're, ticker tape, and all of a sudden the money is flowing back into the cannabis industry. I think we're going to see that up and down. And certainly if you're that kind of an investor, you could time it on impending good news. But at this point, I would say there's really not any immediate good news. People continue to hope for the Safe Banking Act, which would allow cannabis businesses to use the banking system, which they can't do now. There are people waiting for, cannabis to become legal. But I just don't see any of that happening. In fact, as we embark on a new federal campaign where we'll be voting for congresspeople, senators, as well as the presidency, there is just even less likelihood that we're going to see any significant change on the political horizon as we get closer to an election. So I think, unfortunately, we're still talking about an industry where even some of the best-in-class companies are treading water. And certainly, unfortunately, there are those smaller marginal players who are probably going to go under next year, which in the long term makes it good for those who survive, but not necessarily something we should celebrate in an industry that people thought might be different than every other industry in this country. Now we know that's not going to happen.
Well, Mark, it's always a pleasure having you on. Thank you, as always, for joining me today on the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast, and I look forward to catching up with you again in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you, Chanel, and happy holidays.
Thank you. You too.